Hello, my spicy ladies of inestimable value. The most dangerous woman in the room is not the loudest one. It's the one who already understands everyone before they understand her. There's something people don't admit out loud, but they feel it the moment she walks in. Conversations change, performances tighten, jokes become careful, energy shifts, and nobody can fully explain why. It's not because she's trying to intimidate anyone. It's because some people carry a level of awareness that quietly rearranges the emotional atmosphere around them. Now, here's the surprising fact most people never realize. Psychologists have found that highly empathic individuals can detect emotional inconsistency in facial expressions in fractions of a second, often before the other person even realizes what they're feeling themselves. That means while most people are still deciding what they think about a situation, a spicy lady has already read the emotional truth underneath it. She's not reacting late. She's reacting early. And that's exactly what makes her presence so unsettling to people who rely on confusion, performance, or control to stay comfortable. Because the spicy lady doesn't chase attention. She doesn't need approval to stay steady. And she definitely doesn't need a crowd to confirm what her intuition already told her 5 minutes ago. She moves differently. She listens differently. She observes differently. And the truth is, some people sense they can't manage the narrative around her the way they do around others. That's when things get interesting. See, the world usually expects empathy to look soft, agreeable, and easy to influence. But a spicy lady breaks that expectation completely. She understands emotions deeply without being ruled by them. She notices patterns without announcing them. She steps back without explaining herself. And sometimes the most confusing part for people around her is realizing she figured everything out while still smiling politely like nothing happened. Which, honestly, is the emotional equivalent of someone quietly solving the mystery in a movie while everyone else is still looking for the popcorn. So in this video, we're uncovering the hidden abilities that make a Sigma female empath unexpectedly intimidating. Not because she wants power over people, but because awareness itself is power when it's this sharp. And once you recognize these abilities, you'll start understanding why certain people feel strangely exposed around her, even when she hasn't said a single word about what she sees. Number 1. She reads intentions before people even choose their behavior. This ability goes beyond simple observation. It's not about guessing or assuming. It's about recognizing the early formation of intent before it turns into action. Most people operate on what is already visible: words, decisions, or physical behavior. But a spicy lady notices what comes just before that stage. The hesitation before a lie is told. The micro shift in tone when someone is preparing to redirect blame. The sudden emotional adjustment when a person realizes they are being evaluated. These are not obvious signals to the average person, but they form a clear pattern to her. What makes this so powerful is that intentions always leak before they are fully controlled. People believe they can manage how they come across, but they often forget that emotion moves faster than strategy. A thought becomes an intention, and before that intention is fully shaped into behavior, it shows itself in small inconsistencies. A slight delay in response, a change in breathing rhythm, a forced calmness that wasn't there a moment before. She doesn't need confirmation through actions because she is already reading the direction things are heading. This creates a major disconnect between her and others. While people think she is reacting to what they are doing, she is often responding to what they were about to do. That is why some interactions with her feel unusually precise, even uncomfortable. It feels like she is ahead of the moment, but in reality, she is simply paying attention to a layer most people overlook entirely. The result is that manipulation becomes almost ineffective around her. Not because she blocks it, but because she recognizes it at the point of formation. And when intentions are seen too early, they lose their advantage. Number 2. She detects emotional dishonesty faster than logical inconsistency. Most people think lying is exposed through contradictions in facts, but emotional dishonesty is revealed long before logic ever becomes useful. A spicy lady picks up on this immediately. It's not about what is being said, it's about whether the emotion behind the words actually belongs to the moment. When someone says they are fine, but their emotional tone carries irritation, or when they claim confidence, but their energy feels scattered and unstable, she notices the mismatch instantly. Emotional dishonesty is more subtle than a straight lie. It appears when people try to display feelings they are not actually experiencing, or when they attempt to hide emotions that are still active underneath. This creates small gaps in expression, tiny delays in facial response, forced enthusiasm, or emotional overcompensation. Most people miss this because they are focused on content, but she is focused on alignment between feeling and expression. What makes this ability so powerful is that emotional tone is harder to control than words. Words can be rehearsed, expressions can be practiced, but emotional timing is difficult to fake consistently. There is always a brief moment where the real feeling leaks through before the performance resumes. She catches that moment without effort. It is not something she tries to do. It is how she processes people naturally. This is why conversations with her can feel strangely exposed for others. Even when nothing has been directly questioned, people sometimes feel like she already knows what they are not saying out loud. It creates discomfort not because she confronts them, but because she doesn't need to. The emotional truth has already been registered. Over time, this makes her highly selective in trust. Not because she's suspicious, but because emotional dishonesty becomes obvious too quickly to ignore. Number 3. She withdraws access without announcing consequences. This ability is not about punishment or emotional reaction. It is about precision in how she manages proximity to people. Most individuals communicate dissatisfaction through arguments, explanations, or emotional confrontations. A spicy lady does not operate that way. Instead, she adjusts access quietly, and that adjustment carries more impact than any verbal warning ever could. Access in her world is not just physical presence. It includes emotional availability, responsiveness, attention, and how much of her internal world someone is allowed to influence. When she notices inconsistency, disrespect, or emotional manipulation, she does not engage in long discussions to correct it. She simply reduces how much of herself is available to that person. Replies become shorter. Energy becomes neutral. Engagement becomes minimal. In some cases, she simply stops offering emotional participation altogether while still remaining physically present. What makes this powerful is that there is no dramatic signal attached to it. No announcement. No final explanation. The shift is subtle enough that many people do not recognize it immediately. They often assume everything is still the same until they realize they are no longer receiving the same level of attention or emotional responsiveness they once had. This creates a delayed realization effect. People usually only notice the change after they have already lost access. By the time they try to fix things, the emotional distance has already been established. And because there was no confrontation, there is no specific moment to argue against or reverse. This approach also protects her energy. Instead of getting pulled into cycles of justification or emotional debate, she lets behavior define consequence naturally. The absence of explanation is intentional. It removes confusion, but it also removes leverage. Once access is withdrawn, it is not something she argues about. It simply becomes the new standard. Number 4. She studies patterns, not personalities. Most people form opinions based on how someone appears in isolated moments. They look at personality traits like labels, kind, rude, confident, insecure, and lock those labels in as if they explain everything. A spicy lady doesn't work with labels because labels change too easily depending on mood, environment, or audience. Instead, she focuses on patterns, and patterns are far more honest than personality impressions. Patterns reveal consistency over time. She pays attention to how someone behaves when they are comfortable versus when they are under pressure, how they treat people who cannot offer them anything, how they respond when they are not being observed or praised. These repeated behaviors form a structure that shows who someone actually is, not who they are trying to appear to be. This makes her perspective very different from the average person. While others are reacting to the present moment, she is comparing it to previous behavior. A single kind action does not override a repeated pattern of inconsistency. A confident speech does not erase habitual avoidance of accountability. She tracks repetition, not performance. Because of this, she becomes difficult to mislead emotionally. People may try to present a version of themselves that looks stable or impressive in the short term, but long-term patterns expose the truth. She notices when someone is reliable only when it benefits them, or respectful only when they are being watched. These inconsistencies form a pattern she cannot ignore. What makes this powerful is that once a pattern is identified, it becomes the reference point for all future interaction. She does not need constant reassurance or repeated evidence. The pattern has already spoken. And in her mind, patterns are more trustworthy than promises, explanations, or temporary behavior shifts. Number 5, she remembers emotional contradictions people hope were forgotten. This ability is not about having a perfect memory for events. It is about retaining the emotional context behind those events with unusual clarity. A spicy lady doesn't just remember what someone said or did. She remembers the emotional conditions surrounding it. The tone, the timing, the shift in energy, and what the person was trying to avoid acknowledging in that moment all stay stored together as one complete impression. Most people rely on selective memory. They forget emotional inconsistencies over time because it feels easier to move forward without revisiting them. But she does not erase those contradictions. When someone says one thing in a calm moment but behaves completely differently under pressure later, she connects both moments and stores them as a single pattern of inconsistency. Over time, this becomes a detailed emotional record that cannot be easily rewritten by explanations or apologies. What makes this powerful is how it surfaces later. People often assume that if something was not addressed immediately, it was not important. But for her, emotional contradictions remain active in the background. A person might apologize and move on, but if their behavior contradicts that apology later, she does not start from zero again. She starts from the full history, not the most recent version. This creates a situation where people feel like she is hard to convince or too aware of old things. But in reality, she is just not discarding emotional data. She treats emotional behavior as cumulative rather than isolated. Each contradiction adds weight to the overall understanding of someone's consistency. Because of this, trust with her is not built through isolated good moments. It is built through sustained alignment over time. And once emotional contradictions are recorded, they become part of the permanent reference she uses to interpret future behavior. Number 6, she senses power imbalance immediately, even when nobody else notices it yet. This ability is not about status or visible authority. It is about detecting invisible structure in human interactions. A spicy lady notices who is influencing the tone of a group, who is quietly adjusting their behavior to avoid conflict, and who is subtly shaping decisions without speaking the most. Power is not always loud, and she understands that early. Most people recognize power only when it is obvious: job titles, confidence, or direct control. But real power often shows itself in smaller ways. Who gets interrupted and who doesn't. Who others look at before answering a question. Who changes their opinion slightly depending on who is present. She sees these details instantly because they reveal the actual hierarchy beneath the surface. What makes this ability significant is how early it activates. Before a situation fully develops, she can already sense where control is leaning. In friendships, she can detect who is emotionally dependent on whom. In workplaces, she notices who carries hidden influence even if they appear quiet. In social settings, she identifies who is performing dominance and who is reacting to it. This awareness changes how she engages. She does not assume equality in interactions just because it is presented verbally. She watches behavior instead of words. When she detects imbalance, she adjusts her own level of participation accordingly. She does not fight for space in dynamics that are already structured. She simply understands them and chooses how to position herself within them. Because of this, she is rarely caught off guard in group dynamics. By the time others realize how influence is distributed, she has already recognized it and adapted to it. This makes her presence feel unusually grounded because she is not reacting to surface interactions. She is responding to the actual structure underneath them. Number 7, She refuses emotional shortcuts that most people rely on. This ability is about patience, but not in a passive way. It is an active refusal to rush into emotional conclusions or forced connections. A spicy lady does not accept quick trust, fast vulnerability, or immediate emotional alignment just because the environment encourages it. She understands that shortcuts in emotional bonding often hide instability underneath. Most people rely on emotional shortcuts because they reduce uncertainty. They quickly label someone as trustworthy based on charm, shared interests, or emotional intensity in the moment. But she does not treat intensity as proof of depth. She treats it as data that still needs time to stabilize. Without consistency over time, emotional intensity means very little to her. What makes this ability powerful is how it disrupts manipulation through speed. Many people build influence through rapid emotional closeness. They share personal stories early, create artificial comfort, or mirror emotions to create a sense of connection. But she does not accelerate her internal trust just because someone else has accelerated theirs. She stays at her own pace. This creates a natural filter. People who rely on fast emotional entry often lose interest when they realize they cannot rush her understanding. Meanwhile, people who are genuine tend to remain consistent even without immediate validation. Over time, this difference becomes very clear to her. She also avoids emotional decisions made under pressure. If a situation demands instant emotional agreement or immediate attachment, she steps back mentally first. She allows time to confirm whether the connection is real or simply situational. Because of this, her relationships develop slowly but with structure. Nothing is based on impulse or temporary emotional spikes. Every connection must survive time without shortcuts reinforcing it. And anything that depends on speed to exist usually does not last long around her awareness. Number 8, she listens for what people avoid saying, not just what they say. This ability is not about being overly analytical of words. It is about recognizing absence as information. A spicy lady pays attention to the gaps in conversation, the topics carefully avoided, the details skipped over too quickly, and the emotional areas where a person suddenly becomes vague or overly general. These gaps often reveal more than the actual statements. Most people focus on direct communication. Clear's throat. They listen for facts, opinions, and clear statements. But meaning is not only in what is expressed. It is also in what is deliberately left out. When someone changes direction mid-sentence, overexplains a simple point, or avoids naming a specific experience, she notices that shift instantly. It signals discomfort, protection, or intentional omission. What makes this ability powerful is that silence inside speech is rarely accidental. People avoid certain details because those details carry emotional weight or risk exposure. She understands that avoidance is not neutral. It is active behavior disguised as absence. And because she listens for that absence, she often understands the real situation faster than the explanation itself. This creates a unique form of awareness in her interactions. She does not rush to fill conversational gaps or force clarity where it is being withheld. Instead, she registers the avoidance and continues observing. Over time, repeated avoidance around the same subject becomes a clear signal that something is being managed rather than shared. This also changes how people behave around her without realizing it. Some become more careful with their words. Others unconsciously reveal more because they forget she is tracking what is missing, not just what is spoken. Either way, the unspoken layer of communication becomes just as important as the spoken one in her understanding of people. Number 9, she understands sympathy without surrendering discernment. This ability is not about being emotionally distant or unaffected. It is about maintaining clarity while still recognizing someone's emotional state. A spicy lady can acknowledge pain, stress, or struggle in another person without automatically absorbing it, excusing behavior, or losing perspective on what is actually happening. Most people confuse empathy with agreement or emotional merging. When they feel someone's pain, they often soften their judgment, overlook patterns, or ignore inconsistencies. But she separates understanding from approval. She can see why someone feels a certain way without immediately accepting their actions as justified. That separation is what keeps her perception clear. What makes this ability powerful is the balance it creates. She does not become emotionally cold, nor does she become emotionally consumed. Instead, she observes both the feeling and the behavior at the same time. If someone is struggling, but also repeating harmful patterns, she recognizes both realities without letting one erase the other. This prevents her from being easily influenced through emotional pressure. Some people rely on emotional intensity to shift perception, pain, guilt, or vulnerability used as leverage. She does not deny the emotion, but she also does not let it override consistency or accountability. She holds both truths in place at once. Because of this, her support is intentional rather than automatic. She chooses when to engage emotionally and when to step back and observe. That choice is not based on how intense the situation feels, but on whether the situation is aligned with reality or being shaped by distortion. This ability also protects her relationships from imbalance. People around her cannot easily confuse sympathy for permission. They quickly realize that while she may understand their emotional state, she is still aware of patterns, consequences, and repetition. And that combination makes her both compassionate and difficult to manipulate at the same time. Number 10, she recognizes insecurity disguised as confidence. This ability is not about judging people who are confident. It is about detecting when confidence is not actually rooted in stability. A spicy lady notices when confidence is being used as a cover rather than an expression of inner certainty. The difference is subtle, but it shows in consistency, not presentation. Most people take confidence at face value. If someone speaks boldly, maintains strong eye contact, or presents themselves assertively, they are often assumed to be secure. But she looks beyond the surface performance. Real confidence does not need constant reinforcement, exaggeration, or validation through attention. It remains steady without effort. In contrast, insecurity disguised as confidence often requires continuous upkeep. She notices the small signs that reveal the difference. Overcompensation in speech, excessive need to control how they are perceived, sudden defensiveness when questioned lightly, or a strong reaction to harmless disagreement. These reactions expose fragility underneath the surface. What makes this ability powerful is that insecurity often tries to dominate space in subtle ways. It can appear as loudness, dominance in conversation, or a constant need to prove correctness. But she understands that true stability does not compete for attention. It does not react quickly to challenge because it is not threatened by it. Because of this awareness, she does not get influenced by surface-level presence. She does not mistake performance for depth. When she identifies insecurity behind confidence, she adjusts how seriously she takes that presence, not in a dismissive way, but in a grounded way that prevents misinterpretation. Over time, this makes her difficult to impress with appearance alone. People quickly realize that she responds more to consistency than presentation. And once insecurity is detected, it cannot easily disguise itself again in her perception because she already understands what is underneath the performance. Number 11, she protects her energy like it's a limited currency. This ability is not about being selfish or withdrawn. It is about understanding that attention, emotional involvement, and mental focus are not unlimited resources. A spicy lady treats her energy with the same seriousness that others might treat time or money. Once it is spent, it cannot be easily recovered. So she becomes highly intentional about where it goes. Most people give their energy away automatically. They respond to every conversation, every emotional demand, every request for attention without evaluating the cost. But she does not operate on automatic response. She pauses internally before engaging, even if the pause is subtle. In that moment, she evaluates whether the interaction adds clarity, value, or unnecessary emotional drain. What makes this ability powerful is that she does not confuse obligation with access. Just because someone wants her attention does not mean they automatically receive it. She understands that emotional availability is not something that should be constantly open to everyone. It must be regulated based on consistency, respect, and emotional balance. She also recognizes energy leakage in subtle forms, repetitive conversations that lead nowhere, emotional cycles that repeat without change, people who consistently take more than they give. These patterns signal that her energy is being spent without return. And once she identifies that, she naturally reduces her input without needing conflict or explanation. This creates a noticeable difference in how she interacts compared to others. She is present, but not overextended, engaged, but not depleted. She knows when to fully invest and when to step back internally, even if she is physically still in the situation. Because of this discipline, she rarely becomes emotionally overwhelmed by unnecessary chaos. Her energy is not scattered across everything around her. It is directed, measured, and preserved. And that control is what keeps her awareness sharp, even in emotionally demanding environments. Number 12, she understands that attention reveals hierarchy. This ability is not about social status in the obvious sense. It is about recognizing how attention naturally organizes people in any group. A spicy lady notices who gets interrupted and who doesn't, who people respond to immediately, and who others unconsciously wait for before speaking. These small patterns reveal an unspoken structure that most people never consciously analyze. In every group, attention is constantly being distributed even without anyone noticing. Some voices carry more weight, not because they are louder, but because others adjust their behavior around them. She observes who receives that adjustment. If someone speaks and the room slightly shifts focus, she registers that. If someone speaks and the conversation continues unchanged, she registers that too. These reactions form a map of influence. What makes this ability powerful is that hierarchy is rarely announced directly. People may claim equality in words, but attention tells a different story. Who people lean toward, who they avoid correcting, who they look at before agreeing or disagreeing. She reads all of this without needing it explained. She also notices how attention changes depending on presence. Some individuals gain influence when certain people enter the room and lose it when they leave. That shift reveals dependency structures that are not spoken about openly. She tracks these changes instantly, which allows her to understand group dynamics faster than most people can even define them. Because of this awareness, she does not rely on titles or labels to understand social structure. She watches behavior in real time. Over time, she builds a clear understanding of who actually shapes direction, who maintains balance, and who simply follows the flow. And once attention patterns are understood, the real hierarchy becomes impossible to ignore. What ties everything together is not mystery, fear, or superiority. It is awareness applied with discipline. A spicy lady is not terrifying because she tries to be intimidating. She becomes misunderstood because she processes reality on layers most people never slow down enough to notice. While others react to words, she tracks intent. While others respond to behavior, she studies patterns. While others assume emotion is what is said, she reads what is avoided, distorted, or left unspoken. That combination changes everything. It means people are not fully unknown to her after a few interactions. They are gradually understood through consistency, contradiction, timing, and emotional alignment. And once that understanding forms, it doesn't reset easily. She does not need to argue with people to see the truth. She lets time expose it naturally, then adjusts accordingly without needing dramatic explanations. What often surprises people is that this awareness does not make her loud, controlling, or reactive. It makes her selective. She doesn't overextend herself emotionally. She doesn't rush trust. She doesn't compete for attention. Instead, she positions herself where clarity exists and steps back where confusion or inconsistency dominates. That quiet precision is what gives her presence weight without effort. The real intensity comes from the fact that nothing about her awareness is performative. She doesn't announce what she sees. She doesn't need validation for what she understands. She simply operates with information others overlook, and that alone changes how she moves through people and situations. In the end, what people call terrifying is really just clarity without compromise, the ability to see through noise without becoming part of it. And once that kind of perception is developed, it doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. If this message resonated with you, Subscribe to the channel for more deep psychological insights like this. Like the video if it made you think differently. Comment your thoughts below and share it with someone who needs a deeper understanding of human behavior.